But what happened as a result could hardly have been more different. Whatever racial tensions existed in Hall prior to the Forsyth exodus, they were aggravated by the arrival of hundreds of displaced families. So you have to remember, it's kind of like, it's like homelessness. When the police come in, policing, all they do is displace you. They remove your homelessness where they came and harassed you. You know what I'm saying? Molested you, motherfucking uprooted you. And all they did was locate you somewhere else. It's the same thing that's referred to when it comes to crime in general. People falsely believe that increased police presence has an effect on the perceptions of crime and crime itself. Yet in a 1973 Kansas City preventative patrol experiment had studied to see the effects of police increased presence, whether you increase it, decrease it, keep it the same, which was the control group. And they have found that regardless of increased police presence, decreased police presence, or maintaining its average, actions, which was the control group, they have found that it had no effect on how we perceive crime. So the people who still perceived crime to be running rawshod still perceived crime to run rawshod, even with increased police presence. The people who perceived crime to have, little to no increase or effect on society maintain that same sentiment regardless police presence increase, decrease, or maintain. The same goes with crime. Crime still happened to the same extent that it was happening. The only difference that they have found that in these areas that had police presence, instead of the crime happening at that place at that moment in time, it just occurred somewhere else. So there goes to show that it doesn't have any effect, just like here, right? Where we see that race hysteria ran rawshod, okay? The tensions that existed here continue to exist here. It didn't matter what the freak was happening. Hall didn't care what was happening over in Forsyth County because at the end of the day, the way they see it is like, bro, we don't want them here either. And that's kind of like how people are with the homeless population. This is why homelessness is criminalized. People don't want them in their neighborhoods, in their locales. So what does the police do? Take them off the street and throw them in jails and prisons for being impoverished, for being poor, indigents. Well, let's continue. But what happened as a result could hardly have been more different. Whatever racial tensions existed in Hall prior to Forsyth exodus, they were aggravated by the arrival of hundreds of displaced families who camped along the roads leading into Gainesville and crowded into homes of friends and relatives in the African American sections of town. Kind of like what we see with homelessness now. The same thing we see with this influx of immigration. Nothing against them. However, you tend to see them highly overpopulated in areas, groups that's already exhausted. And when I say exhausted, I mean, when you look where I live, off of Dewey Avenue in Rochester, New York. I live closer to Dewey Avenue as it leads to Emerson, right? That side of Dewey Avenue, although it don't matter what side of Dewey Avenue you look like, majority of Dewey Avenue is impoverished, whether white or black. However, you see the segregation take place because the further Dewey Avenue gets to the beach, it becomes white impoverished. The closer that it gets to the city, the closer that it gets to Lowell Avenue, it becomes black and impoverished. And in between there's these sprinkles of immigrants, which we've had a higher influx here in Rochester between the Asian community, the Middle Eastern community. That's been like the most, but for the most part, it's this influx. So when these black people are displaced from Forsyth County, they're going to do like the average person. They're going to fall upon comfort. Ideally, they're not going to move to areas that are homogeneously white, but they're going to move to areas that look like them, have similar financial setups as them, educational backgrounds, and it tends to be your skin folk. You see what I'm saying? And so now you got all these black people who's been displaced from motherfucking Forsyth, now contributing to the homeless population. It said that they're literally camped along the roads leading into Gainesville. They're not even legitimate, housing structures. It's camping sites along the roads leading towards Gainesville. So that would be equivalent to like an expressway, a highway, you know what I'm saying? Something like that. These are now homeless people who've been displaced from one location to the next. And none of the issues that contributed or led to this incident have been addressed, have been fixed. Only thing that happened, a white girl was abused and later died from her injuries. So ultimately she was murdered. White anxiety brought them to think that it was the outside people, even though data to this day have shown, and it has shown for several decades, that you are more likely, based on data, you are more likely to be assaulted, to be murdered, to be raped, anything of the sort by someone that you know versus a stranger. Stranger to stranger assaults, rapes, murders, and stuff like that is very rare. You're more likely to be harmed by someone you know, which regarding this young lady, Mae Crow, she 9 times out of 10 was abused and harmed by someone she knows. But because of white anxiety, people fears the other, you know what I'm saying? Then you have the racial tensions. You got people who falsely believe that the resources and services that they once were allowed to utilize have been depleted by outside factors, which over time it's been depleted in general. And it ain't got squat to do with the race of the people. It got to do with the people in charge, because they are the ones that decide how funding and services and resources are disseminated amongst the masses. Individuals don't have that power. You see what I'm saying? So now you got all these homeless people, all these motherfucking superly impoverished people. And now it also contributes to the crime factor, because many people know crime and poverty, they go 2 and 2 with each other. Now, I do think that eliminates the idea or the actual fact that crime isn't necessarily linked to poverty in a sense that you're impoverished, you're going to be a criminal, because we see that there's what is referred to white collar criminals, wealthy people engaged in criminal activity. It's how it's carried out, how law is carried out, how law is defined, how law is interpreted. That's where it varies. That's why you see wealthy people, what they would call or consider white collar criminals, evade jail and prison time. And a bunch of poor people go in there, because at the end of the day, most criminality is based on finances. If you could pay your way out of it, you will never see a day in jail or prison, which is why rich people don't ever really see prison time, jail time. That's why majority jails and prisons are full of poor people. It's not because we disproportionately commit the most crimes. No, we are disproportionately arrested, charged, convicted, you know what I'm saying, and punished harshly than our wealthier counterparts. And that's the same thing that goes here, is that these people will more likely end up in the criminal justice system, end up in the carceral system. Because why? They are easily accessible to the cops now, because now they went from law-abiding citizens, they went from hardworking individuals having a shelter, to now they're looked at as vagabonds. You see what I'm saying? Now they're looked at as these homeless people that just roams the street with no cares in the world, no motherfucking ambition to get a job or anything of the sort. And now they start applying these fallacies to these people because of the situation they are currently in, that was exacerbated by a combination of our government and racist white people who didn't know how to properly direct their frustrations, nor investigate a legit crime. But I digress. These are the same people who take up our police force now. Anyways, let's continue. If you want people to think otherwise of you more positively, then give them more positive experiences.